Hello, and welcome to Emotional Badass, where Moxie meets Mindful. I'm your host, Nikki Eisenhower, life coach and psychotherapist. And on today's episode, this is a part 2. We're exploring empaths and emotion. Hello, y'all. So this is a part 2. If you haven't already, please stop here and go back and listen to last week's part 1 episode. Find the link to part 1 in the description. Remember that you can always listen to ad-free episodes on our Patreon, and you can help me build into having a full-time team member. That is a huge goal for my tiny team. You can support my work and this show, get a shout out on the show, and get commercial-free episodes by coming to the Patreon. So continuing from last week's part 1 episode of Empaths and Emotion, I'm going to highlight 4 common traps that I see empaths get themselves into without realizing it's a trap. This is not an exhaustive list, and I could never make one. I hope this list gives you new perspective and helps you see, feel, and catch any emotional traps that you may have been falling into for years or a lifetime without ever knowing that the way you're processing is a trap. The first trap I have for you to consider is anger and compassion. Why is this a trap? Well, empaths tend to be so uncomfortable with pure anger that they tell themselves that they need to dance around it. They tell themselves the second they're dipping a toe into the anger process, nope, I feel like a bad person. And when I don't want to be angry. I don't want to feel like a bad person. It feels nasty. It feels low vibe. I don't like it. So I shouldn't feel angry, and I should have compassion for the person who did me wrong or made me angry. And they leave their anger to process compassion for the party that induced the anger in the first place. I understand this. I did this for a long time. It makes sense. We're seekers. If you are listening to me right now, you are most definitely a seeker, or you wouldn't have made it all the way to hearing my voice today. We're hungry for figuring things out. We let our seeker spirit guide our personal development, our growth, the wisdom that we add to our lives. We value not falling in the same hole again and again and again and figuring it out and moving forward. So it's very common for seekers to learn that compassion is good. Compassion is right. Empathy is right. We're empaths after all. Compassion makes sense to our big feely hearts when anger doesn't. It's easy to fall into this trap of thinking, yeah, I'm angry, but I should have compassion, shouldn't I? This is literally like having one foot in the pool and one on the pavement. One leg reaching up to sit on a horse while the other stays planted on the ground. This is like having one foot in the grave and one foot out. If no one has ever told you before, let it be me now. It is okay for you to just be freaking angry when you're angry. I used to do this with my estranged sisters. Hard. Torture myself between anger and compassion. I'd start to process my anger at them when I was younger. And then in the next breath, I'd make excuses for them out of compassion. What do I expect? They had our parents. They don't know any better. These are true sentiments from compassion, but this truth doesn't help me. It didn't do me any favors. We have to understand what this is, understand what I was doing to myself. There is a time and a place to process compassionately towards others. And there is a time and a place to process and release your emotion. This is not the same time and place. These are separate times and separate places. But empaths show up and muddle these two very separate things. I kept myself in emotional confusion. Like I put myself in an emotional pinball machine. The ball hitting anger. Yeah, I get to process anger. Then, nope, I can't process anger. I got to go over here to compassion. Then, nope, I'm angry again. Anger, compassion, like doing a very sick dance. And I didn't get anywhere. Talk about a dynamic of 2 steps forward with the thought, I am angry, and then 2 steps back, not allowing myself to process the anger. Those 2 steps back, telling myself it was more important to extend compassion to them than to allow myself to fully process my pain, because the deep down pusher of this process is, I don't know if I'm a good person if I'm just in my anger. I know I'm a good person when I'm in compassion. This is a deep, often unspoken fear an empath is carrying around that pushes this 2 step forward, 2 steps back, 1 foot in, 1 foot out dynamic that just extends our pain. My sisters were very angry with me. They were angry with me about revealing the secret of our abuse. They were more angry at me than at our mother or at the abuser. It's a very common thing that happens in families with such abuse. The secret breaker becomes the scapegoat, becomes the target of the anger instead of the actual abuser. What happened in this dance is I became the great dismisser of my own emotional process. How dare I not allow myself to be angry that I was the scapegoat? And anger is secondary, y'all. It sits on the top because it's a powerful emotion. The deeper truth of any anger is that we're hurt. So I wouldn't let myself process my hurt. And I did this to myself thinking I was being kind, evolved, even mature and wise. No wonder I couldn't regulate my nervous system back then. I was holding on to all the pain. I was telling myself it was more important to be compassionate outwardly instead of compassionate to me. It's just not right to expect ourselves to be in anger and compassion in the same moment. No wonder we feel overwhelmed. No wonder we feel scattered. No wonder we feel confused, because we can't do both of those things at the same time. And this subconscious expectation just brings more anger, because the inner child sits back looking at the adult like, hey, is it ever okay for me to just be? To just feel? Do we have to overthink everything through this lens of, but I don't feel like a good person if I'm not forcing compassion down my own throat? I had to understand, and then from that understanding, give myself permission to just process the anger and not try to process anger with compassion. This is also exhausting. It's likely the number one complaint of empaths that they're exhausted. And it's very easy for an empath to think that others exhaust them with their bad behavior, right? I get it, I do. But a deeper truth and a deeper personal ownership that can eventually bring you more freedom and peace, because it's a personal ownership of what you can actually change or affect, is that this processing both at once, anger and compassion, this expectation that we put on ourselves is a real culprit of not being able to rest, to restore, to revive ourselves. After I figured this out, then I could write a purely angry letter, never to send, just for me and my healer to process together so that I could get my anger and hurt out. Then, very naturally, honestly, as I released anger, compassion settled in me for them. I didn't have to try to be compassionate. I didn't have to force my mind or my heart towards compassion. The spaciousness from releasing my anger and hurt naturally filled with compassion. But not just compassion for them, compassion for me. Remember to find Emotional Badass wherever you get your podcasts, and make sure to hit that subscribe and follow button to get more videos like this in your feed and to help us grow. People who lean codependent, people-pleasing, it's a one-way street of compassion outward, care outward. And we don't heal if that continues. We have to make that a two-way street. Healing people-pleasing isn't about never pleasing somebody else ever again. It's about putting yourself on that list, being willing to please you too. If we try to dually process anger and compassion, we just extend our pain because we don't get through releasing the anger. If this resonates with you, I encourage you to give great complete permission to process the pain solely. Then separately later, find compassion. Let yourself know that you are a good person, even when you're processing the low vibe, funky emotions. But the truth is, all of us would like to never feel, but they're part of the human condition. We have to figure out how to feel them. If you do this, you will notice that being confused when you're processing your emotion. Nope, take that out, Chris. What you will notice if you tackle this dynamic within yourself is that, unfortunately, being confused about emotion has become an unfortunate comfort zone. Empaths are notorious for starting to feel something and process emotion and go, I'm just so confused. I'm so confused. I often tell clients, you aren't confused. You're actually pissed. You're angry. You're hurt. You're not confused and pissed. Just be pissed. Be angry. If we want to stop so much confusion inside of ourselves, we can't continue to just practice the state of confusion. The truth is, you've rarely been confused emotionally. You've been overwhelmed. It's been complex. And you've gotten a lot of advice that wasn't very healthy when it comes to emotion. But very often you were not confused. What's confusing is someone else manipulating. What's confusing is someone else being discompassionate. You're not confused when you're angry. You're just angry, hurt. Somewhere along the way, we subconsciously decided that the state of overwhelming confusion was safer or wiser than to sit in the purity of, I have been wronged and I'm angry and I'm hurt. I don't like somebody else's behavior. It is wrong towards me. And we can learn how to put our foot down in the truth of that instead of leaving the ground, becoming ungrounded and swarming around in our thoughts in this cultivated comfort zone of confusion. Here's another emotional trap. Disappointment and gratitude. Certainly in this pumped up victim identity culture that's being encouraged, one can wallow in disappointment with no dancing, no 1 foot in, 1 foot out. People will lay down and die in their victim mentality these days. Just give up. But seekers who are self-developing, they don't appreciate giving up. And their seeking spirits, their tendencies towards seeking, towards moving forward, keep them moving forward. Seekers tend to learn the value of gratitude early on and lean into its wisdom, just like we do with compassion. Just like anger, disappointment is deeply uncomfortable for empaths. Have a disappointment, and I see an empath mindlessly, automatically refuse to accept and sit with that emotion. And instead, they start dancing in and out. Disappointment and gratitude, disappointment and gratitude, disappointment and gratitude. So here's an example. I think I've mentioned this in the Patreon, if not on the live feed. I was deeply, deeply disappointed earlier this year because a publisher came to me. And long story short, the contract was a worst nightmare for someone like me. And they sneakily wanted me to sign a contract that would have given them ownership over every single piece of content I have ever created, even this show, that they could then repackage and sell without even giving me recognition, much less fair compensation for my life's work. I can self-publish. The disappointment wasn't so much in this isn't going to work out and I'm not going to be a published author right now. It was in the lady I was dealing with having very friendly, honest, safe vibes while trying to pull this with me when I was clearly communicating that I would never sign anything that made me lose rights to anything else. And I'd only be willing to have a publisher have rights to the book they published, which should be how it works, y'all. I was deeply disappointed in the moral compass of this woman. Her ease at trying to manipulate me. I caught myself starting the dance, not wanting to feel the full disappointment. The dance can so easily ensue, y'all. We can talk ourselves out of processing the uncomfortable emotion at hand. And I caught myself doing this. I caught myself trying to paint over my disappointment with gratitude. But because I have known this dynamic, this trapping I'm speaking to you about today and on last week's episode, I was able to catch it pretty quickly. I caught the language in my head that said, yeah, it's disappointing, but look at everything that's working. Look at how many people you've reached with the show. Look at what you have, not at what you don't have. Look at all the people that you have that have high moral compass around you. It's not that gratitude is ever wrong, y'all. It's that gratitude isn't an appropriate cover-up. Gratitude doesn't disintegrate the disappointment. In this way, gratitude becomes the rug I was trying to sweep my disappointment under, and I was starting to trip over. In this recognition, I let myself write my disappointment, my pure disappointment that I never shared with that woman, just to release, to give myself some space, some acknowledgement, some 2 feet into my disappointment instead of 1 foot in and 1 foot out. I needed to release the weight her low integrity had left me in as a form of disappointment. With disappointment cleared out, and if it starts to rise again, I release it again. This is not a one and done kind of thing, y'all, as we move through life. But as I could clear it out, it's natural, it's easy, it's peaceful to be in gratitude for everything else that I have. But that gratitude, healthfully, is more like an atmosphere as the air I breathe out in the light of day, instead of gratitude being used like a rug or a paint to cover up my pain. When you're very smart, this is what our minds can do. It can misuse gratitude in a way that actually hurts us instead of helps us. It can misuse compassion in a way that prolongs our pain instead of helping us release it. It's not our stupidity that does that. It's our intelligence. This is why I say we need to be smarter than our smarts. Here's another. Sadness and depression. Now, till this moment, the other examples I've given so far have been near opposites of emotions. This example, sadness and depression, has much more similarity. But we need to know the difference as empaths, y'all. So hear me out. I know that you don't want either. You don't want sadness or depression. So just hear me out. Give me a chance here. What I'm pitching is more of a beautiful sadness. We have this in the common vernacular. We have this as an idea. We all know this idea. A good cry. And a good cry, it feels like a good nap. There's an old episode of Everybody Loves Raymond. It's an old, funny sitcom where he's walking back to his house that he shares with his wife, and he kind of catches her image through the window, and she's crying. She's sitting on the sofa with a tissue. She's bawling. And he kind of panics, like, oh my gosh, my wife is so sad. She's so upset. I thought she was fine. What's going on? And of course, because it's a comedy sitcom, hilarity ensues. And at the end, they finally have the conversation about it. And he learns from her that she just cries every now and then. When she gets a moment, she'll turn on a song that helps her cry, and she releases. Now, there are 2 main things that I teach at this point in my career, y'all. I am the lady that teaches peace and boundaries. Now, if we have peace with sadness, then we can also have boundaries with sadness. We need both peace and boundaries with the concept of sadness. Part of being alive is a duality of highs and lows, day and night, light and dark. Sadness and joy, not just all joy all the time, all happiness. We need the contrast. We really do. Even when we hate it, even when we fight it, even when we don't want it, the contrast is good for us. It's okay to cry for those hurt children on the other side of the world who are maybe in a war-torn country. Or maybe we'll cry for the kids that we know are going hungry today that live just a few miles away from us in the city. We might cry in any moment in recognition that there are people today who have lost their closest loved one. We can have sadness for the brevity of the lifespan of our cats and our dogs. And we can cry, we can acknowledge. We can play a song, we can take a moment. We can have a moment in a window in the rain or the snow and allow a beautiful sadness about what is sad about this life, what is sadly outside of our control to just fix and never have a child to go hungry again. Like the day needs the night and the night needs the day to be in balance. We can accept this instead of trying to always have joy and happiness. Sadness makes us appreciate the positive in life, the way the night makes us appreciate the day, and the day makes us appreciate the night. If all we had was all daytime, all the time, even the most beautiful, glorious, sunshiny, lovely day, we'd all get pretty sick of it, wouldn't we? My Breakthrough Peace program kicks off on the 1st of the month. It combines my 30 Days to Peace course, a brand new online community, and a group coaching program, all in one place. I created this program as a resource to help guide you in transforming everyday stress into calm through simple daily practices that only take 5 to 15 minutes. And once you learn them, you will have them available in your pocket for a lifetime. In just 30 days, you'll build lasting inner peace muscles and master techniques you can rely on for a lifetime. Visit emotionalbadass.com/peace to learn more and choose the option that is right for you. Far too often, I hear empaths describe simple sadness as depression. And they program themselves repeating, "I'm depressed, I'm so depressed, I'm depressed." If you're a parent, I would very much interrupt any child saying, "I'm depressed, I'm depressed." I would absolutely confront that. Very often, we are not depressed, we are just sad. You have a lot of power to not let sadness become a deep, dark hole that we call depression. We've done so much in mental health through social media and talk shows and trying to combat stigma to seek mental health help in the last few decades that I believe we have an overkill of sorts about not blaming the victim, that we forget that even victims have some responsibility. I am responsible for my healing, no matter how unfair or wrong the abuses I've endured have been. We forget that it's on all of us to handle whatever life throws our way and take responsibility for what we do next. Not just for what we consciously choose, but for whatever is bestowed on us by the organized chaos of the universe. We have to take responsibility for what's fair and what is deeply unfair. I don't appreciate the powerlessness suggested when it comes to depression. Like it's just something you have, like it falls out of the sky. Chemical imbalance has been debunked by science, y'all. It really has. I'm floored that we're not having a massive change in how we prescribe medication and how the medical field deals with depression. But here we are. The only, and I do mean the only thing I have ever seen really heal depression. I've seen meds band-aid it, but not heal it. The only thing I have ever seen heal depression in 19 years of this work is acting your way out of it. Not thinking your way out of it, not waiting till life gets fair to participate in it, but pushing, climbing, forcing oneself out of that black hole of depression. And yes, it might be the hardest thing you ever do. When I look back at my life, it was the hardest thing I ever did. Get myself out of the deep, dark hole of so much depression. I had psychomotor struggle. My body would not move, and yet I had to will it to move until it listened. Part of long-term healing is learning that sadness is normal and it's not depression. Believe in your power to never slip into depression, to never dig that hole deeper. So it sounds backwards, strange even for me to say it like this. Allow yourself to simply be sad sometimes. Put on a song, cry for what is sad, release it. And don't lay down in a hole. Rather, shift out and away from depression. We are feelers, y'all. And we can make peace with the realities of sadness we will be invited to feel in this life. The more we learn to respect emotion and feel it, instead of thwarting it by trying to think it, we can move through it with flow, with ease, and then shift towards what is lighter. Just like Ray's wife did in that sitcom episode. She said, I'm fine now. I got it out. He didn't have to worry about his wife. She was taking care of herself. She was doing something very human, very healthy by releasing and then shifting. After sadness, just like after anger, then you bring in gratitude, compassion, but not at the same time. The last emotional trap I want to discuss with you today is desire and resistance. Now, I highlighted the Down syndrome mind in part 1, the wisdom inherent in them. I believe they have more happiness and joy because of simplicity. And I don't mean simple in any kind of insulting way. I mean simple in a glorious, brilliant way. There is a reason we say there is a fine line between genius and insanity, y'all. A genius can have the amount of opposing thoughts that create a mental break, that pull them in so many different directions they don't know what's real anymore. What I find helpful to consider here is that an empath tends to have a lot of different parts. And I don't just mean our inner child and our wise woman or our wise man parts. These parts aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. For example, these parts aren't necessarily mutually exclusive, and our parts are not always super logical. They want what they want, and one part has a hard time considering the other. So for example, I have parts of me that are in great opposition at all times. There's a part of me that loves the hustle and bustle of city life. Me and my husband even promised each other when we met we would never be the people that tried to pressure each other to leave the city. And here we are living in the mountains, way outside of the city. So a part of me still loves the hustle and bustle of city life. And another part of me fantasizes about living on a private island or endless open acreage in the country. I have a part of me that can get overstimulated by sound or wind on my skin, a very reserved part. And then another part that is full, go after it adventurer who's gone skydiving and backpacks for days in the mountains. Today, I can own this from working on self-worth and esteem. I'm a deeply kind and tender and loving person. I know that like I know my first name. I'm also extremely fierce, and my inner circle jokes that I'm the top pick if we face a zombie apocalypse, because I will do whatever it takes to survive. We have as empaths, as highly sensitive people, as deep people, as survivors in recovery, a depth to our psychological parts and personality. It's expansive. It's multifaceted. It's layered. They're often in opposition, these parts. We will often find ourselves in opposition within ourselves, on top of any opposition we have with other people. We can feel tremendously torn between our parts until we understand and acknowledge that we have these opposing parts. We will often find ourselves both desiring something and having a great resistance to it at the same time. Desire and resistance. A part of me is very committed to saving financially and investing. And another part of me is hot to be a big spender. If I don't accept and understand and embrace this duality, this reality inside of me, I'm going to have a very hard time making decisions. I'm going to have a very hard time negotiating with myself because I don't even know that I need to. And I'm going to feel, frankly, pretty crazy trying to negotiate this opposition that resides inside of me. It's on me to recognize this, to acknowledge this, and to sit with myself to figure out, what do I want? What am I willing to do? And what am I unwilling to do? And yes, previous boundaries course participants, you are hearing the personal boundary work and language you know from the course right here. We can't do boundaries very well with others if we can't do boundaries very well with ourselves. And we have to understand our own complexity of parts to be able to do so. The way I process this within myself and with my clients, specifically here, desire and resistance, like wanting to save and spend at the very same time, is sort of the idea of a mother with multiple kids. These different parts are like multiple kids inside of me that I need to manage. Every mom of multiple kids knows one kid very often wants one thing and the other kid wants the opposite. How does one sort this out and guide it as a mother or as a parent, as a father? Well, it depends, right? This is why I can't really just give you a script the way that we just want the script or the formula for this stuff, because it's not a formula, it's an art. And it's an art that's going to keep expanding in each of us over every single day of our lives. Engaging the spirit of negotiating is crucial. We are negotiating with our internal opposing parts like a mom helps her kids negotiate. If my saving part has gotten its way lately, it's been fed, so to speak, then with that balance in mind, I might lean towards spending in this moment. And vice versa. If I've been spending a lot, then I'm going to lean into saving. If one kid got to pick the restaurant last time, then the other kid gets to pick this time. And it's okay if the kid that's not getting his or her way is a little miffed. It's a good life lesson in patience, consideration, and the reality that we have to negotiate with others and we don't always get our way. This is true of any real children in life, and this is true of our internal parts. Now, I want to be clear before I end this episode in saying that for decades, the public has muddled and confused schizophrenia, multiple personalities, and dissociative identity disorder. When I have this conversation about our parts, sometimes people go, "Oh my goodness, do I have multiple personalities?" No, I am not saying you or I have multiple personalities, but we do have multiple facets, often opposing parts of our one self. We are like a diamond in that way, multifaceted in how the light reflects, depending on how the light hits that diamond, how we turn that diamond in our hand. And when that diamond is clean and shiny, more is reflected. When we get clearer, kind of shining our internal parts too, we have more clarity, more shininess too. Healing and self-development in my book is largely about learning to embrace and guide the complexity of all of these parts. And to do that with more simplicity than complexity. I have a lot of opposing parts. That's not crazy. It's actually a form of higher intelligence to have this multiplicity psychologically. It's a rich, varied, interesting personality to have so many parts. But I also want the peace, the presence, and joy I have come to know in my Down syndrome gurus, in their joyous genius. I've said to hundreds of empaths, we have to be smarter than our smarts. And if our smarts are making us unsettled, anxious, unhappy, confused, stressed out, exhausted, we must become smarter than that. I can't be okay with the idea that smarter people are just unhappier people. Are you kidding me? No way to that. What will you say to that? What will you do with your smarts? It may not be PC, and I may have the internet come after me for this one, y'all. But I can't count how many times I have thought of the Down syndrome population I've known and thought, how would they be in this moment? To find the brilliant simplicity my smart mind can so easily thwart, I've tapped into this wisdom, asking for it the way I believe some people pray to their version of God. And I have to say, as someone who has been tested and affirmed as having a high IQ, that tapping into the wisdom of the spirit of people with Down syndrome might just be one of the smartest things I've ever done. I hope this episode helps you look for wisdom in unconventional places, helps you look beneath the conventional ways we've been taught about intelligence and smarts and wisdom. And I hope this episode helps you see intelligence in very new and different ways. If you want to spend some time with me cultivating peace in a group coaching environment, come reach out on our website, emotionalbadass.com/peace. Or if you're in our Patreon, send us a message through Patreon. If you're interested in doing some group coaching with me towards peace, you can learn more or sign up. It's a 3-month program. We'll meet 2 times a month, and we will work towards peace, meeting you right where you are in real life. Whether it's the little things that rob you of peace, like that one sock that always gets lost in the laundry, or the biggies, like your family allows your abuser at the holiday. We will explore how to bring more peace, what peace can look and feel like without being all Pollyanna about it. We start in January, the Breakthrough Peace Program. I am an emotional badass. You are an emotional badass. And together we are where Moxie meets mindful. I'll see you right here next time for a brand new episode, or on the Patreon for a commercial-free one. Light and love. Bye-bye. Things that rob you of peace, like that one sock that always gets lost in the laundry, or the biggies, like your family allows your abuser at the holiday. We will explore how to bring more peace, what peace can look and feel like without being all Pollyanna about it. We start in January, the Breakthrough Peace Program. I am an emotional badass. You are an emotional badass. And together we are where Moxie meets mindful. I'll see you right here next time for a brand new episode, or on the Patreon for a commercial-free one. Light and love. Bye-bye.